Welcome to Womb Talk. I'm your host, Elizabeth Vanda, a holistic doula and a women's health coach. And I'm the founder of Fruitful Womb Doula Services. This space is for every woman walking the path of deeper healing. Whether you're tending to your fertility, you're carrying life, or you're stepping into motherhood, or even easing into the wisdom of menopause. Here we honor the full spectrum of womanhood through story, nourishment, and sacred conversation. Let's settle in, take a deep breath, and begin. Today we have the wonderful Vanda, and I would love for you to just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing and how life's been treating you lately.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. So, my name is Vanda. I'm a functional medicine nurse. I've been a nurse for about 11 years now, little over 11 years really. And then I did my functional medicine training started about 3 to 4 years ago. It's always, of course, an ongoing learning journey. But I came into functional medicine through some of my own struggles with my hormones, specifically after going off birth control and losing my cycle for several months and fighting to get that back. And then going through my first pregnancy and trying to recover postpartum. So that is like how I came to be into this business and into this world. I love it so much. But then on a more personal note, I have a husband of a little over 6 years. His name is Blake. And then we have 4 children together. Their ages range from 8 all the way down to 10 months old.
Oh,
We have our oldest son, he is adopted, and then the other 3 are our biological children, and they keep us very busy. They're involved in a lot. We love to keep them involved, so we do all kinds of like sports and clubs and activities, and we just absolutely love it.
wow. Oh, that's amazing. And I love that, you just really show the shine of busy mom, like having your own business, with all the kids and the different activities. I'm like, oh yeah, busy mom status right there. I love it.
100%, yeah.
That's awesome. And I love how you said too that, it was kind of triggered by your own personal story a little bit. I feel that quite a few people in this space it started with us, right? And then we
Yeah.
go wanting to help others. So I just love that on an added note of what you had said. But I really would love to know, you were talking about that you did functional medicine a little bit. And so what are some of the common hormone or mineral imbalances that can impact a woman's ability to get pregnant?
Yeah, so that is my area of expertise. I'm so passionate about women's health and hormones and helping women to learn about their hormones because it's just not something that we're taught a whole lot about. So, and honestly, it is something that I feel like we kind of have to learn when we hit that point in life that we're ready to get pregnant because prior to that point, for the majority of us, we've kind of been taught this story that we can get pregnant all throughout the month. Anytime, it's just like you're taught from such a young age to be terrified of getting pregnant and to protect yourself from that. I think there's definitely like value in that. I understand some of the reasoning behind that fear, but it leads us down this path of just misunderstanding. And so when you get to the point that you're ready to have a baby and start a family, you do kind of have to learn sometimes the hard way, like, oh, I can't just get pregnant whenever I want to. And I need to learn more about my hormones and my cycle so that I can make that a reality. And so I work with a lot of women that are in that space, and I do 2 different functional tests in my practice. I do a hair tissue mineral analysis, or an HTMA test, as you'll most often hear me refer to it as. That is to assess your mineral levels in your body and also take a look at heavy metals. And then I do the DUTCH test, which is a dried urine comprehensive hormone assessment. So that's where we find out what's your estrogen level, what's your progesterone, your testosterone. It even looks at cortisol, which is your stress hormone that the body makes. And then we also get a little deeper look into not just what are those levels, but how is the body using those? How is the body metabolizing those different hormones?
Oh, wow.
So that really helps us to, paint the picture of what is going on with someone's hormones. And then, you know, especially related to like pregnancy and fertility, how is that impacting their ability to get pregnant? So you ask, like, what are the common, imbalances that can impact someone's fertility? So first thing that comes to mind would be estrogen dominance. And there's kind of two different ways that can show up. You can have frank estrogen dominance where you just have too much estrogen. But then you can also have estrogen dominance coming from the fact that your progesterone is too low. So it's really more of an imbalance between the two, not necessarily just that you have too much estrogen, because you can have estrogen dominance and be in the normal range of estrogen, but because your progesterone is too low or just not sufficient enough, it gives you the estrogen dominant symptoms. So that would definitely be one that is very common. We have to have enough progesterone to sustain a healthy pregnancy. That's kind of what gets our little embryos and babies through until our placenta is established. So if you don't have enough progesterone, then that can definitely lead to either inability to get pregnant or those early miscarriages. Then if we kind of flip that and we think about the mineral aspect of things, potassium and low potassium would be a big one. We have a sodium and potassium pump on every single one of our cells, and it dictates, what can come inside the cell and what can go out of the cell. So we want that process working really efficiently to help us get hormones inside the cell, get nutrients inside the cell, because that's where those things really have to be in order to do their job. And then on the flip side of that, we want it to be working really well so that it can kick out the things that aren't supposed to be there, like heavy metals and toxins that, unfortunately in today's environment, we're exposed to a lot of, even when we're trying to be careful and trying to make, healthier decisions for ourselves. But low potassium, also comes into play because it really impacts our thyroid function. And, thyroid has a lot to do with, are we ovulating? Are we ovulating regularly? And without sufficient potassium, it's really hard for our thyroid hormone to get inside our cell. So even if your body's thyroid itself is functioning well, maybe you go to your doctor and you get those labs done. They're like, oh yeah, your thyroid looks fine. Well, that's really just testing, can the body make thyroid hormone? And it can. Okay, that's great. But then can we actually get it inside the cell where it needs to be to do its job? And that's where we get a look into the minerals. So that would be two of the big ones that come to mind.
Oh, wow. There's just, I've said this a few times here, but like, there's so many layers to our health as women. And we're often just like, oh, hormones, ovulation. But then if you go deeper, like thyroid, and then now you're talking about lower potassium, and I'm like, so many levels, so many levels. No wonder people sometimes feel overwhelmed with like how much we need to keep an eye on really for our bodies a little bit. So it's just very incredible. That's great information to have. So how do these functional tests that you were mentioning, the HTMA and the DUTCH test, I believe it was, how do they give us a better picture of fertility health rather than our traditional blood work that we do?
Oh, I love this question. So I'll start with HTMA testing first. You can get some of your mineral levels checked through blood work. However, the hurdle there is that it's only checking what that level is at that single point in time that you go get your blood work done. With hair tissue mineral analysis, we're able to see a 3 to 4 month period of time. It's like an average over that time period for what that level is. And because our body works really hard to maintain homeostasis, which is like kind of like the happy spot for our body, it's like it feels safe, it's in a healthy time, it feels healthy and good. Our body wants to keep us in that state. Our blood is really tightly regulated because of that. And so our body will work really hard to keep those levels in the blood to be, within the range of where they're supposed to be. So sometimes that means it might be, pulling calcium from like your bones and teeth and pulling it into the blood to keep the level sufficient in the blood. And so with a hair tissue mineral analysis, we're not actually looking at what is in the blood. We get a peek inside the cell. So it's a different look at those mineral levels. Then with the DUTCH testing, again, when you go the blood lab route, you are getting your labs drawn one time. And depending on how thorough your doctor is that has sent you for those labs, Sometimes there's a big missing piece of education of when in your cycle you should go get those labs drawn. So we are very careful with Dutch testing to time it with your cycle appropriately. And then you're not just doing one sample, you're actually collecting 4 to 5 samples throughout a 24-hour period to get, varying levels throughout the day. We can account for that. And then also that is how we get the piece of information of how is the body metabolizing this and then excreting it. And I think some people kind of feel a little intimidated by the Dutch test because it's like urine samples and you think you have to like collect this urine sample, but they have it really streamlined. It's actually just strips of paper, this special paper that you either pee directly onto or you collect in a cup and dip it and then you let that dry and it gets shipped back to the lab. So it's not as like cumbersome as a process as it like sounds initially. I always like to throw that in there.
Well, that's good because I'm assuming a lot of people maybe are quickly feared off by it then
Yes,
because of that. Anything with a little more work, and that's what I'm saying with the layers. If we're like, it's scary, all the work that has to go into things. But if someone was planning to conceive in the next 6 to 12 months, what are a few ways that they could start supporting their body now? Like, what would be your top 3, 5 that you would be like, do this, do this?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, if you're on birth control, get yourself transitioned off, definitely, because the most important thing to always remember when we're having this part of the conversation is that what you're doing today is going to impact your egg health 90 to 100 days from now.
Yeah.
So people, that's a big thing people don't know or they don't understand is like you have to start planning ahead for conception. So definitely go ahead, transition off the birth control. Sometimes, like I shared in the beginning from my personal story, I lost my cycle for 9, almost 10 months when I went off birth control.
Wow.
That doesn't always happen, but it definitely can happen. So you want to, account for that as well. And then birth control depletes some of your vitamins and minerals. And you want to give yourself time to be able to replenish all of that. So that would be like my number one recommendation. Secondary to that would be to start tracking your cycle and really start like paying attention and understanding the signs that your body is giving you. So get some education on like the fertility awareness method where you're going to learn about how to track like some basal body temperatures. You're going to track cervical mucus, learn those signs of what fertile mucus looks like and feels like, because timing intercourse around when you're ovulating is key to getting pregnant. The other thing would be to do some functional testing. Now, which ones you're going to need is going to be different based on your situation. I don't always recommend Dutch testing to every single person because not everybody needs it. But hair tissue mineral analysis, the HTMA test, is helpful for pretty much everybody. To just know where you're at, where your deficiencies are. That way we can work to get you built back up before you get into a pregnancy, because during pregnancy, you're going to be sustaining your body's needs and then also giving so much of your vitamins and minerals and resources to growing a human and then to breastfeeding beyond that if you choose to breastfeed. And one of the pieces that I feel like you can do just kind of in general, if you're like, okay, I know I need to start working on these things, but like either I'm not ready to get testing yet or I can't afford testing, like tell me something I can just do in general. We can always benefit from more vitamins and minerals from a food form. So start adding in more fruits, more veggies to your diet, and make sure that you're getting adequate amounts of those in each day, because that's really where we get the majority of our vitamins and minerals from.
Oh, wow. There's so much to it. And food is such a important part. That's why in the intro too, I mentioned nourishment, because food is such a big layer. And I grew up, my grandmother used to always say that the food that she ate in her day was different than the food that we eat today because of how things are planted and the different nutrients. Like I think it was in a Lily Nichols book. I forget exactly where I had read it, but I had read somewhere that the potato that your grandparents would eat, you need 10 potatoes
Yep.
to get that same nutrient. And, you know, who wants to eat 10 full potatoes, really? I mean, I'm good with one potato at dinner sometimes. So 10 is just wow. So you kind of always need to be eating lots of kind of healthy foods and things like that. So I thought you
Yeah.
made a very good point there to add that in.
Well, and I think too that I preach on that all the time about how, our lands and where we source from, it's been farmed for so many years that
Yes.
she's right. Like those foods don't have the same nutritional content. So that's kind of why supplements have became almost necessary. Like
Yeah.
food first, absolutely. But I take that a step further and always educate people too that you need to do smart supplementation and you kind of need to have data to back up what supplements you're taking, because otherwise you can inadvertently be taking something that is kind of causing you more harm than good or causing more stress on your body than it's helping. Because without the data to back us up, we're just guessing. Like we're just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing like what kind of sticks and helps us feel better.
Yeah. I love that spaghetti sticks on the wall. I've never heard of that before, but I love that so much. Uh, so, what are some of your thoughts on fertility practices prior to conception? So, should we worry about our health maybe 5 to 10 years before you want to have kids? Like, what are your thoughts a little? I see you smiling, so I think we're on the same page.
I think this is kind of a loaded question. Like I definitely do think like we are living in a time where there is a lot of education out there
Yeah.
on what are hormone disruptors, what are, estrogen mimicking things in our environment, in our diet that maybe we need to avoid. I think it's good to be aware of some of those pieces. And I don't think that it really serves people well to be obsessive or like highly stressed over it that far in advance. Because that stress, or if you're someone that like feels like very type A, I have to do things perfectly, and you start kind of obsessing over it's like, oh, well, I have to do all of this right. That type of stress on your body can kind of be just as harmful or more so than, say, like the chemical that you're trying to avoid. So I mean, I definitely think there's value in being aware and taking a as early as possible proactive approach to your health and having natural cycles that, like, are not interfered with by birth control. I think there's value in that, but I think there's a fine line there between being intentional and obsessive. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I was thinking pretty much the same line as you. It's just like, looking at your health and just making sure you're healthy.
Yeah.
Making sure that, like you mentioned natural cycles, like having them just come and go as they please, really. Just like
Yeah.
having that regularity, because, that's what we need as healthy women. Like, I always have a hard time personally with birth control just because it does stop the original flow of the body. And so my
Yep.
brain is always like, yeah, I don't know if that's how it was meant to be, but no judgment to those who use it. It's more of the fact of like, how can we help ourselves closer to the time when we do want to conceive? And like you said earlier, normally 6 to 12 months is a good range to
Yeah.
do such. So I think we agreed pretty much on the same point when asked the question. I was like, oh yeah. So we've got a great link in the comments about Hormones 101. So I just thought, would you like to explain what that is, how it can help women, and why they need to like sign up immediately?
Yeah, absolutely. So Hormones 101 is a secret podcast. I think it's 8 episodes. You can listen to the whole thing in under 25 minutes.
Oh wow.
And it's a great place to like dig a little deeper into the basics of hormones, but then I also do a little bit more deeper explaining on the Dutch test and hair tissue and mineral analysis. I go into some case studies and then a look into my own tests when I've done them on myself in the past. And it's, like I said, it's really easy to listen to, and you get a lot of good educational value out of that. So definitely take advantage, sign up for that, give it a listen. And throughout that, then you'll also have access to like email me if you have questions. And it's a great resource. I love it. It's one of like my favorite things that I've put together as a resource. So I hope everybody will will take advantage and sign up for it.
Yeah, well, I'm excited. I think I have a few listeners that I already know. I'm like, ooh, I think they're gonna probably sign up for it. So that's a good thing. And I'm just curious out of, my own necessity, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot here a little bit. But these kind of tests that we were talking about earlier, do you think it applies to people that maybe are like maybe perimenopause or like leading up to it? You think it would be beneficial for them as well?
Yeah, HTMA testing for sure.
Okay.
There's honestly like not a situation where I don't think HTMA testing would be valuable for somebody because of the wealth of information that you get from it. There's over 38 different data points that we get, and it's helpful for like men, children, women of all ages. Like it's just it is like my favorite test because I'm a data nerd. I'm a very data driven person. So I like love to have the data to back things up, but you also just learn so much from it, like way more than what I went into today.
Yeah.
So definitely that one. And then, but even Dutch testing can still be helpful for someone that's like on that line of like, and maybe even question themselves,
Yeah.
like, I'm young, like, is this perimenopause? Even if you're getting into a little older, like, am I hitting menopause now? How do I know? Because there's a lot of things that change in women's hormones, like in your 30s, late 30s into the 40s. And it definitely is valuable to like, let's see what really the levels are. Are we making assumptions thinking that something is high or low just based off symptoms? Because from a functional medicine standpoint, one of the most valuable things that I do with clients is sit down and hear their story. Like I have a very detailed intake assessment that I do. Like, tell me your symptoms, tell me what's going on, tell me when they started. When I have calls with clients, just having that back and forth of their story and their symptoms is so powerful. But then we do also need to have the actual numbers because sometimes symptoms sound one way and we think, oh, well, this is going to be estrogen dominance. But then we run the labs and that's not actually the case. It's actually an imbalance in something else. So I think it's very valuable to have the data to go along with it.
Well, that's why I thought I'd ask because I was like, that sounds like it might be beneficial for them. And I'm debating if I've even done the hair, that HTMA one, because I think I know I did a hair and it was like you swab the inside of your mouth. I'm pretty
Oh, okay.
sure I did one similar to it or whatever. And because I'm in Canada, so we had to ship it to the States, my herbalist. But what had come from it was they had actually found that I had a history of a parasite or I
Uh-huh.
currently had a parasite. And so I had actually just ended up in the hospital with an abscess by the time that I got those results. So I was
Uh-huh.
just on antibiotics. So I was like, oh, guess I killed that if it was still there. So it's very fun to see the facts, like kind of what's going on in your body that you don't physically know right now. Like I can't
Yeah.
sit here and be like, yep, I have parasites, I have this, like I'm not able to have an X-ray internally to see what's going on. So tests like
Yeah.
those are very beneficial. So my last on the
Absolutely.
spot question to kind of end us off is the start of a new kind of little part of the series is, what does being a woman mean to you? And I know it's a heavy question, so it's like whatever, what you want to think of and just how you feel, I
Yeah.
guess.
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is being a mom and being in motherhood. I've wanted to be a mom for as long as I can remember. It was always like, I didn't know what I wanted to be exactly when I grew up, but I always knew that I wanted to be a mom and I wanted to have kids. So, I mean, I think it really all just ties back to that. I think like as I've gotten older the last few years, I have a really close friend that we talk about this a lot. Like, we've really come into the age of honoring like our place as a woman, like maintaining the household, like just I don't know, handling some of those tasks that are very like woman driven or very motherly, and not letting like society tell us that that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I love that response. And you're the first to start us off on the series for that. So thank
Real
you
glad
very
to be
much.
here.
But I had a wonderful time. I'm so glad we got to talk about this. I think this applies to even those who aren't trying to conceive right now. They're just anything about hormones. I mean, if you're
Oh
a
yeah.
woman, you've got hormones. So I think it applies to everyone listening because we're designed for women. So thank you so much for joining us. And I really hope you'll come back again for a future episode and keep listening, guys. We're going to be back next Monday with another episode. Bye bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.